Hey guys, how are you doing? My name is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and welcome back. So today's topic is an interesting one, and I think will be a lot of fun to discuss and break down. And this is actually something that comes from a user, somebody who follows me on Twitter, and I think has also been active in some of the live streams I've been doing lately. What had happened was a few days ago on Twitter, I did put a call out, as I love to do, you guys know, for some questions, for some sort of upcoming Q&A, maybe a full-sized Q&A or a mini Q&A, I haven't really decided yet. And one of the questions was interesting enough that I actually wanted to pull it aside and address it in one video. Now, to be fair, this isn't actually even posed as a question. I think it's something that he was more just wanting to point out to me as far as an idea or something he had been thinking about. Tweeted it to me in response to my Q&A questions request, and I realized that there is a little bit of a conversation here, and so that's what we're going to do. So this comes from, again on Twitter, BLP Sean at British Playing, and he asks about the idea that there are two groups of people, one who can't wait for the 3DS to die so it stops, quote, diverting resources, and another, mainly Pokemon fans actually, who question why games just can't keep coming to the 3DS and why they even have to upgrade. So there you go. Again, it's really less of a question and more of a statement about the fact that he sees possibly two different groups of Nintendo fans or gamers on the Switch and or the 3DS, and there are different people with different desires complaining about the lack of these games on this console, but what about the games on this console? And maybe they want certain resources or titles to continue on their platform of choice between specifically the Switch and the 3DS. And I will admit that while I don't think that this is a huge problem that I've seen from a lot of different people, I think I've seen enough evidence as to what Sean seems to be talking about here that made me kind of think about the idea of the relationship between the Switch and the 3DS, which I have discussed a little bit on previous videos, but it gave me a reason to maybe want to dive a little bit more into what's happening and whether or not the 3DS still continuing for the foreseeable future, so says Nintendo, so says Reggie, is that affecting possibly negatively the Nintendo Switch? So here's the thing. Here's the ultimate thing before I get a little bit deeper into this. Ultimately, really, my answer to this is no. I don't actually see the 3DS having any sort of real negative impact to the Switch. But like I said, there are some things going on that still make it a worthy conversation, I think, to just kind of dissect what it is Sean is getting at. And I think that there's something going on here, so we'll talk about the first idea he brings up. One group of people that apparently he's seen pretty often who can't wait for the 3DS to die so that it stops diverting resources away from the Switch. So he feels like there are people who themselves feel that the 3DS simply existing currently, a couple of games still coming, and we know that there are still some games that Nintendo has promised will be coming out in 2018. Is this a situation where because Nintendo is still focusing a little bit on the dying 3DS and releasing a few games, is that diverting resources, and do these people have a legitimate claim? And I mean, like I just said, no, I don't really think that that is the case. I mean, if we look at what Nintendo is really doing with the 3DS, or we'll even call it the DS family, because of course they did not too long ago release a newer version of the 2DS, so there's the 3DS and the 2DS and newer versions of these consoles coming out, the Samus Special Edition of the 3DS for when Samus Returns came out, all these different things. So they're releasing new titles and new hardware in the DS family. That is a true thing and something worth taking note of here. If you really look, though, at everything Nintendo is doing here, I don't see it as diverting anything away from the Nintendo Switch, and if you want more proof of that, just look at the Switch. Look at how well it's selling, look at how well Nintendo is marketing it, how much time and effort and money they're putting into the marketing and making sure that they're getting more consoles out there for people to buy because they keep selling out. And then, of course, we have the library. I mean, Nintendo's only given us reason to believe that they've been focusing the majority of their actual internal first-party software development almost exclusively on the Switch. I mean, Samus Returns was the latest huge actual brand new game from Nintendo for the 3DS, and there was the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon Pokemon games, which, again, to my knowledge, as a not very educated Pokemon guy, I'm pretty sure those are just pseudo-upgraded or updated versions of the already released Sun and Moon games that came out last year. So yes, there's obviously some effort they would have put into those games, but they didn't create brand new Pokemon games with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. These were just remasters or remakes or whatever it is they did differently there. So that's pretty much it. And then Ever Oasis did come out earlier in the year as well. So you got a couple of new things coming out for the 3DS in 2017. And yes, they've said a couple of other things coming out next year. Oh, hey, Pikmin was another one. Okay, so 4 or 5 titles. And something is going to be coming out next year as well. But man, look at what Nintendo did on the Switch this year. Between Zelda and Mario and ARMS and Splatoon and Mario plus Rabbids and Xenoblade and Fire Emblem Warriors, holy freaking cow, that is not a company that is diverting its own internal resources, at least as far as I can see. That is not a company diverting these resources away from this main console and throwing it onto their very outdated 6-7-year-old dying portable console. It should also be noted here that I'm not against the idea of Nintendo continuing to support the 3DS, mostly because I believed even before Nintendo showed us that they would be able to easily handle supporting the Nintendo Switch and also supporting the 3DS as it slowly fades out. And, all these games for the Switch that I just listed off, not to mention several new ones we know they're working on for the next coming years, that really does prove my point. I mean, we're not seeing a Nintendo that is unable to support their new console, the Switch, home console, handheld, whatever you want to call it. We're not seeing a Nintendo that's unable to support that simply because they're doing a couple of things for the fading 3DS, if I could speak correctly. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. I mean, that's just the way I personally see it. I know that some people are out there possibly complaining about this and worried about the 3DS is so important to me, and so I just can't believe that they're diverting resources from the Switch. I mean, they should just be so focused on the Switch and just forget the 3DS. I know that there are people out there like that, but I just don't really see too many of them, and I don't see it as a problem because Nintendo is killing it with the Switch. And so let's quickly address the other point and group of people Sean brings up here, which is how he phrases it, mainly Pokemon fans who question why games just can't keep coming to the 3DS and why they even have to upgrade, as in upgrade from their 3DS to a Nintendo Switch. And that's another interesting conversation to talk about. Again, I'm going to pretty much echo the same sentiment I've had a couple of times already in this video. I don't really see this as a problem. I don't really see a lot of people stating this, and I definitely don't think that it's an actual issue. But I know that there's probably a small conglomerate out there, and obviously Sean must have seen it, and it does become very interesting to kind of dissect the whole idea here. And, okay, so, people who are mostly Pokemon fans, obviously, because Pokemon has been so tied to the Game Boy lines and the DS lines, all the handheld stuff, that's what Nintendo envisioned Pokemon as, a handheld portable franchise. And that's simply because they're Pokemon fans, or just fans of the 3DS. They don't like the idea that Nintendo comes out with this new machine, which is, yes, a home console, but also, yes, a handheld. So in a lot of ways, it replaces and enhances the portable handheld experience that the 3DS can only do, and so they feel like they're being coerced by the big evil machine that is Nintendo to have to ditch their 3DS that they're so dying to cling on to 6-7 years after the thing launched, and they're so mad about that all of a sudden Nintendo's like, you gotta upgrade to the new $300 Switch because that 3DS is dumb, no more Pokemon games for you. And for anyone out there who maybe does feel that way, again, I haven't really seen much of that, but for anyone out there who does feel that way, I think you're clinging to the past, and you're not paying attention to what's happening around you, you're not paying attention to the video game industry around you, and you're not paying attention to what Nintendo is doing as any other company would do in the industry, always trying to move forward and always developing new experience and new hardware, new consoles, new handhelds, new games. That's what they do. It's what Sony does. It's what Microsoft does. It's what third-party developers do. And if you really feel like it's just like the analogy I just made, Nintendo being this big bad machine that's trying to force you to upgrade to a $300 thing, well, yeah, to a degree, that is what's happening because the 3DS is old and it's outdated and it's not moving units and software like it was. And so the big new thing comes along. It's the better thing. It's the more advanced tech. It's more appropriate for this generation and for the year of 2017 and 2018 and the next couple of years. The 3DS simply won't suffice. At some point, consoles and handhelds and just different generations of hardware do become outdated, and eventually the newer, better thing comes along and replaces it, and they become older, quote, legacy or retro consoles. That's been going on forever in gaming. I mean, anyone who feels that way, I could only assume might be really young and new to gaming possibly and doesn't understand that that's what happens, but I just don't think there's that many people out there that are that blind to the truth of this. I mean, hardware and technology improves, and thus newer hardware and technology comes out. I mean, are you still clinging on to your iPhone 3G from 5 years ago? No, because the 4 and the 5 and the 6 and the 7 and the 10 and the whatever has come out, and so technology improves, and you have to upgrade to the new thing. An iPhone 3G wouldn't do squat diddly for you now, just like in another probably 2 or 3 years, the 3DS also won't do squat diddly for you. So The difference is, though, per my analogy of Nintendo being a, quote, big bad machine, yes, they might be saying, hey, it's time to upgrade to the new Switch, but I don't think they're being big and bad. They're just being normal. They're being standard. They're doing what they've always done for 30 years, and what their peers in the industry, Sony and Microsoft, have also done throughout their own lifespans. So it just seems like a weird thing to complain about. Hey, you're a Pokemon fan, you want your Pokemon games to stay on your outdated 3DS forever. I don't know what to tell you. You're just being completely ridiculous, in my opinion. I mean, hey, hold on to your 3DS. You don't have to stop playing your 3DS and the Pokemon games and the other games that already exist on it. Just keep playing them. They'll exist for as long as you hold on to them. No one's telling you not to keep playing on it. It's just everyone else is moving on to the newer thing, and you apparently want to stay stuck in the past, according to the folks and conversations Sean here has seen. And if that's what you want to do, then hey, whatever, more power to you. So that's kind of how I see it. Like I said, I thought this was an interesting topic and an interesting phrasing of a statement / question, a topic from some conversations. Obviously, Sean here has run into a few times and wanted to bring up to me to hear me kind of riff about it and discuss my ideas. And like I said, I had this 10 or 15 minutes here that I could actually talk about this. So I didn't want to feature it on a Q&A with other questions. I wanted to pull it out, like I said, and make it its own kind of video and topic, because I kind of had a lot to say, even though I don't really believe any of it, and I don't think that anyone who feels this way has much of a claim. I still had a lot to say on it. So, go figure. That's just what I like to do. That's how I roll, because I like talking about interesting topics, no matter what it is and no matter how I feel about it. So I'm curious what you guys have to say. As always, does this make sense to you? Do you understand the logic behind either of these two groups? Have you seen these conversations happening? Do you agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Do you agree with kind of my perspectives here? I mean, whatever you guys have to say about what Sean brought up here, I want to hear you guys discuss and see you talk about it in the comments below. So that is it for me today, guys. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.